Yeah, Htp family. You're tuning into the pro-black perspective on KWAZ radio. Uh, I tried to open up this PDF. I wonder if it's jammed or something. But today we're doing the Warship as usual, the weekly Warship, and today is of course greatest orators. You see Marcus Garvey, proudly, you know, has a place here. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump to page 66 because we're going to be finishing off this book. So obviously, if you want, you can download this book uh, free of charge. It's in the description for this video. And, before everything gets started, I just want to let you know who you're listening to, what you're listening to, and why you may be listening to it. So this is the pro-black perspective on KWAZ Radio. We're part of the KWAZ Radio family. There are at least 3 other podcasts on the network. So you have the Harsh Reality podcast, you have the Bitter Medicine podcast, and of course you have the Queen's Council. Definitely check them all out. It's a very eclectic group, and it's growing. So, and of course, if you want to be a part of it, that's that's your prerogative. I mean, you just try to do so. Right now, we're going to get into this book, The Greatest Orators, and it's really important. I want to tell you something. So, I've it's come to my attention. Like I'm telling you, listen to the podcast. Listen to the podcast network. Bitter Medicine had a podcast yesterday where they were discussing. Where he was reading a paper that explores an alternative or advanced African economic ideology. Okay, and one of the issues that was explored was this idea that uh, the banking industry should be in the public sphere. Okay, that the banking industry should be in the public sphere, and of course, if you understand banking now. When you pick up the Book of Power, you'll see that one of the 12 subjects that I think that are underexplored and but they need to be evaluated or need to be understood for an African people to really talk about African nationhood is banking. You know, and one of the things that like I said, as I get into this trading and trying to make myself some some real money, right? I I realize that if banks are on this speculative market, right? If banks are on this market of speculation, right? Do you want public funds to be there? And do you want incentives to be limited? You know, like how do you want to really uh, explore the financing of a nation? Because the thing with banks is that they take risk. I'll tell you in this sense, right? If I want to start a business in a community, right? I I have to maybe put up 10 grand, okay? And with that 10 grand, go to the bank and say, here's my collateral or whatever. Here's 10 grand, here's also my collateral, whatever that may be. Let's say it's property I own already, right? Uh, and I tell them you can have this if I default on my loan, right? And if I default on my loan, but I want a loan of $1 million, right? In order to buy this building, because I think this is a good business plan. I go over it with the bank and I say, here's my business plan, and the bank says either yes or no, right? But they do this with the understanding that this is kind of quasi their money, not really their money, but kind of their money. And as well, they do this with the understanding that that if you default, that they're gonna have your property that's probably not worth $1 million or whatever, or they're gonna have to do something with your property like sell it, blah blah blah. Basically, you know, there's a whole industry involved in this banking thing, and the question becomes: do you want this in the private sphere, or do you want this in the public sphere? Now, maybe you do. Maybe you do want politicians to appoint those who will then support the whoever the community, blah blah blah. You may want that, but that's really, or you want those people to be elected. Who knows? You know, oh, we elect for this XYZ. This is really a complicated question, you know, that requires a complicated understanding. And I realize that, you know, I may not have all the answers. I may not even fully grasp it. But I think that, you know, exposing our people to the deeper thinking in regards to, you know, those 12 subjects I outlined in the Book of Power, you know, which is banking, military, engineering, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? Civil engineering, pure sciences, those fields, you know, just giving and allowing for deep thought in those things uh, may well advantage us. So, you know, I'm gonna say look out for the Book of Knowledge. You know, and if you want to see the Book of Knowledge, just, you know, drop a like, drop a subscription, and we could probably explore this together. But let's go into this book, which is The Greatest Orators by by me. All right. So let's see. Isn't it strange that the Askari leaders cannot realize that the white man shares Europe with no one? So this is Carl Sankofa. So this is a brilliant way to start it. You know, one of the things, like I said, you know, underexplored ideas is the banking, is the military engineering, is the civil engineering, is the pure sciences, is the census, is the so on and so. Like go down the list inside of the Book of Power. But these are underexplored by African people. White people explore these, and they don't actually they don't actually share the secrets with you know, African people. You know, like just recently, the United States was hacked by the Soviet Union. Basically, what I'm saying is this: that the Soviet Union was inside the nuclear, you know, like nuclear secrets and all that kind of stuff. Oh, sorry, nuclear secrets and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, you know, I grew up under George Bush. George Bush was my president when I grew up, so he mispronounced that. So you know, he's the only person talking about it. But anyway, nuclear. Or let's just say atomic, right? Atomic weaponry, right? Like, you have to notice that the white man doesn't actually share these secrets with you. You know, he shares it with the English. He shares it with the French. He shares it with, you know, the Germans now. He doesn't share it with the African American. He doesn't share it with, you know, the Caribbean African. He doesn't share it with the continental African. He doesn't share it with you. He doesn't share his land with you. You know, you are essentially a squatter. There was actually a really interesting tweet by the sister. I think I can actually show it to you. Yeah, I think I'll show it to you. Well, I can't show you her tweet because her account is private, but it was a really brilliant video. I actually didn't get to finish watching it, you know, so that's partly why I didn't bother to quote unquote retweet it, share it. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share it with the fam on Discord, and then I'm gonna play it here. So I'm gonna first look for the video because it's a really good summary. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can find it. I gotta try to remember the sister's account name. But like I said, she had a private account, so it's a little more difficult to find. You know, this was like an hour or two ago, so I gotta scroll through hours of content. So just bear with me. Okay, here. Also, it looks like my computer didn't. It looks like my phone didn't update, so that's another thing. So this is Sister Aqua Boogie. Aqua Boogie. So okay. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see. I'm gonna put it in funny in the Discord. It's a comment someone said. This is African. All right. All right. Let's see. Let's just open up funny in the Discord. We're gonna navigate to the Discord really quickly. Switch screens. Discord. Apparently I gotta put the particular window up. Funny. Here you go. Alright. So scroll down. There's a bunch of funny stuff. This one right here. So I'm gonna click on this. Now here's the problem. It's now not even in because it's not opening in Discord. I should have just downloaded the video. But all right. So I'm gonna now switch it over to my other screen, which is the let's say YouTube. Yeah. Okay. So here, check this out.
Just look what happens when mom goes for the fridge.
I do it tight so she can't even stick her hand in there and try to pull.
I'm gonna give you the context. So it says, speaking of squatting, this is the craziest story I've ever seen. They hired a live-in nanny, and after a while, she refused to work, so they fired her. She refused to leave their home, and now is legally permitted to squat there.
Just look what happens when mom goes for the fridge.
I do it tight so she can't even stick her hand in there and try to pull things out.
Yes, that's a bike lock on the refrigerator, put there to keep the nanny away.
I hired a nanny, and she refuses to leave. I am completely on my wit's end. I've been crying.
For nearly a month, the Bracamonte family has been trying to lock out their live-in nanny from a lot more than that fridge.
This is America, land of the free, and I'm not free in my home. I'm a prisoner in my home.
They want her evicted from their suburban home in Upland, about an hour east of Los Angeles, after they say she quit working. This is your house. We're sitting in your living room. Did you have any idea it was so hard to kick somebody out of your house?
No, because I've seen it happen so many times. People say, get out.
So this corner of your house is basically off limits to you guys right now. But they have a problem now. Meet 64-year-old Diane Stratton. The family says they fired the live-in nanny after they claim she quit working around the house, complained of health problems, and spent nearly all day locked behind this door. And if I want to see this room, you won't let me inside.
We can't let you inside. This is now, by court, by law, this is her domain.
That's as far as I saw, so I don't know what else is going to happen, but, you know, you could kind of see, you know, we're the black American, or the, you know, the African American, or whatever you want to call them, you know, where the story comes in. You know, you have, you know, people who, you know, I guess, you know, were taken here or whatever, or, you know, invited here or whatever. I mean, obviously forcefully. And then it's like, okay, we're done with you, and they just stay. And then it's like, hey, how do we get rid of you? You know, we're locking you out of the food. You're clearly not wanted, and you kind of just stick around. You know, there's this idea that, you know, it kind of goes back to the Carlos A. Cooks, which is, you know, white people don't really share the land. You know, they didn't come here and say, natives, let's build a cohabitation, if you will. You know, they just kind of said, yeah, we're gonna be the only people here. You know, and that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. I don't know if you, I mean, yeah, no. Come to my, yeah, follow me on Twitter if you want to see the rest, right? You know what I'm saying? Oh, whoops, I should have shown this window. Hold on a second. Yeah, follow me on Twitter if you want to see the rest, I guess. What happened? Did I? Okay, yeah. Alright, anyway, so that's pretty much it, though. Yeah, so let's go to this. So you said, isn't it strange that the Ascari leaders cannot realize that the white man shares Europe with no one? So, you know, a lot of us are looking to become a part of the American or the European experience. You know, a lot of us are working hard to be in their country, right? But we're not really fathoming, we're not really grasping that, you know, Wazungu doesn't share with anyone else. You know, it's not, and I mean that's really the gist of it. And I think this is like a really deep sentiment that we have to grasp, if nothing else. You know. So let's see. The main point is that if you panic around information, you go wrong. Always prepare yourself for any eventuality, and what comes, let it come. So this is another thing that's really important. You know, don't panic around information. You know, Carlos A. Cooks, I want you to read his book. I obviously digitized and made it available to you. So, you know, you join the Discord, you go to the free book section, and then you scroll around and you could see the Carlos A. Cooks reader. Okay? If you want, if that's too complicated, you could just go onto the Discord and say, hey, how can I get to the free books? And I got you. All right. If that's even too complicated, just DM me in some way and say, how can I get this book? But of course, I prefer that you go on the Discord so that communication channels are open, you know. But the story here goes that he was given information. I don't recall exactly, but because I haven't read the book in a minute, right? But he's given information, let's say of like police showing up or whatever, and instead of like, oh no, I don't want police to show up, he organizes people to deal with that, and what ends up happening, or it might be like maybe like it was a rival, like a white group that was trying to buck with them, but what ends up happening is a police horse dies, and a policeman is like injured or killed or one of the two, right? But his crew is unharmed. They scuffle with the rival group and probably the police. I'm not too sure, but they eventually just in and out, and nobody's harmed. You know what I mean? And none of them are harmed. And that's really like how you're supposed to do skirmishes, how you do war, how you do battles. It's the reality being that if you don't panic around information, you don't start gritting sweats, you prepare yourself, and then you deal with reality. What comes. But you don't panic, and this is why information is so vital. So that's also something that I think would be heavy, something to consider for this next book, which is just to give a lot of information in regards to whatever it is I may be talking about. So whereas I may not be an expert on weapons manufacturing, I could describe the concavity and convex shapes, what they do for ballistics, what sort of powders are available, what kind of gunpowders are available, what sort of cylindrical shapes, what kind of shapes may facilitate a better let's say firearm. If you're doing firearms manufacturing, if you're doing ships manufacturing, if you're doing so on and so forth, these are the kind of things that you want to inundate our people with, notwithstanding the fact that you may not have that expertise, just so that those who do have that expertise or do gain that expertise or do explore the subject, explore it in a more profound way than what is typically expected of them, or although nothing is expected of them, but that's another one that we have to consider. So I mean, I do recommend you go home, well not go home, but you read this description that Carlos A. Cooks has in his book, and of course, as usual, you can get it, for free on the Discord. All right. So this is another one. So this is Nothing is Produced Through Anarchy. So this is actually a really important concept, because a lot of people seem to be under the impression that they should be, what in the world? Okay. Yeah. So anyway, so a lot of people are under the impression that government is the government is the enemy, and it's not that government is the enemy. Like maybe your enemy's government is the enemy, but that's only because it's your enemy's government. You know what I mean? And everything about your enemy should be your enemy, right? But or every institution of your enemy should be your enemy as well. But government is not your enemy. Anarchy cannot produce anything. Lawlessness, chaos, just tomfuckery, if you will, right? Should not be considered, like an object or of a people. Now, I understand being anti-government in your enemy's land, but I do not understand being in your enemy's land. Like I don't understand politically being in your enemy's land almost exclusively as your domain of quote unquote struggle, because it's not really fathomable. It's not really productive, I would say. But yeah, let's keep going. Carlos A. Cooks. All right. So if you, the men of our nation, will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will. So this is Sankofa, of course, legend of the African canon. If you are not familiar with her, she after the Ashanti men were defeated, she led the women to more battles. Now, of course, ultimately the Ashanti were not victorious, but the idea is to not surrender, especially not if you haven't exhausted all your resources. I also do understand the lack of desire of men to lose their women to war. I understand that. There's and of course I also understand the need for surrender and or a tactical surrender. Now it may be that we have to inform our people that surrender to Wazungu is not a good idea, particularly depending on the terms. But it's a really hard thing to say. Like, do you want to be like the natives? You know what I mean? Do you want to be like the natives in Africa? Or, sorry, not the natives in Africa. Do you want to be like the Amerindians, but in Africa? Where you are restricted to reservations, in very limited numbers, with no hope, whatsoever. Because at least, the Ashanti, the Akan, the Africans in general, they have some hope of retaking their nations, definitely. But again, what of the Amerindian who's completely outnumbered, completely replaced, and completely devastated? This does bring into the question of what is what are the conditions for surrender? Because what good is being annihilated? Now you want to prevent being annihilated into the future, but it's also a matter of to what extent could you have prevented that, if you're not a population that was militarily prepared to not be annihilated. So again, these are questions and concerns that we really need to think about, if nothing else. Well, let's keep advancing. Throw away the likeness of the Eurasian's aspirate, who has so often brought us to tears, and listen to liberty, which speaks in all our hearts. So this is Bookman Dati. Obviously, I put down a spirit because he was going to put down he said something else, but it's throw away the likeness of the Eurasian. Like, you should not continue on the Eurasian's spirituality. You should not have a Eurasian's religion. You should not. You should listen to the liberty in your heart and forget the Eurasian's spirituality. Eurasian, sorry, not spirituality, religion, right? This is easier said than done, because like I've said before, these religions, they have replaced, they have a need in the community. They have a need in the community that is not really being addressed outside of the religion. So, you need marriage ceremonies. You need funerals. You need rites of passages. You need these things, and the church provides all of those. The religions provide all of those. And no one else does. No one else provides burial services. No one else provides weddings. And of course, you could have a traditional African one, and that's fine. But it's not really as widespread and available as you may think. It really isn't as widespread and available as you may think. It's not really too integrated, and moreover, it's not really too integrated in the systems that you may find yourself in, particularly if you're in the Western Hemisphere. If you're in the Western Hemisphere, having a traditional wedding is not really something that's available in most parts of the planet, or most parts of the Western Hemisphere. Obviously it's available on Africa, but again, you're not even in Africa, so it's almost a moot point. But I mean, this is going to be a harder one to convince people of. You don't have to convince people of this. And that's another thing too. Don't bother. Don't try to convince people. Don't really complain about people. Just pursue your spirituality accordingly. Pursue your spirituality accordingly, and believe in it. Hold on to it, and that's all you can do. Well, that, and express yourself accordingly. You know, uh, one of the interesting things in the chat yesterday, I think it was yesterday. No, in the last podcast that dealt with the Marxists was you know Bit of Medicine exclaimed Amen Ra. And that's what, like those kind of exclamations. That's what you should do. Just follow your spirituality and be vocal about it. Be loud about it. Talk about Ma'at in casual conversation. Talk about, our spiritual system in casual conversation. Don't just, relegate it. Don't have it privately. Wear it around you. Be about it. And be about it proudly and loudly. And that's really all you should do. You shouldn't have to, oh yeah, you're the white man's religion, blah blah. Like, that's just noise. No one wants to hear that. Follow your own spiritual system, and as we build institutions, we build those institutions around those spiritual systems as well. We must take the unequivocal position that if the black race is to perish, the world must perish with us. So this is Bookman. So he's saying, look, fight, never surrender in a sense, and that's fine too. But again, the conditions of never surrender are like we're gonna have to make it so that we never have to surrender. That not just that, but we never perish. For not surrendering. That's what we have to really focus on and concentrate on. Being a people who have the military strength to stand up to any other people. Right now we don't have that sort of ability, and because we don't have that ability, it really becomes bravado when we mention this stuff. Now, Bookman Dati did, he was killed, and of course, IT did survive this war, but there's a lot of liberation struggles before and after IT that did not survive. A lot of the people were in fact slaughtered. So while IT was successful, it shows that this is not a game, and things can go north or south. And I should actually say south is a good thing, but you already, obviously we're speaking English and they don't think south is a good thing. But let's see. Blood debts must be repaid in blood. So this is Bookman Dati. So he's saying, if if somebody owes you based off of their injuring you or killing you, then that's what he repaid in blood. Yeah, then you should injure or kill them. And this should be common sense, I would think. But unfortunately it's not. It's not. A lot of us, like, for instance, what we do is we kind of trust their court system, and I mean it's really, realistically speaking, you can't vilify people for that either. You can't vilify people for trusting their enemy's court system, because the reality is that that's the only court system that's available to them. The reality is that you're in another person's nation, so it's not it's almost like when in Rome. You're not in your own nation. If you decide, look, if you like one of the beliefs is that the only way, for instance, one of the some people will say the only way to end police brutality is to kill cops or something, right? If you were to do that, there are examples of that. I will say, they don't last too long. One, and two, again, it's like what's your long-term strategy? Your long-term strategy in another person's land. It's like this nanny. The nanny, if the nanny starts to, lock their fridge as well, what's her long-term strategy? Or the nanny starts to, kill their residents. What's her long-term strategy? Short-term, it makes sense. Short-term, but long-term, there's, when you're so outnumbered and outgunned and out whatever, it behooves you to, it's better for you to just remember the debt. and move to where you can actually, if you want to, avenge those deaths. You know, uh, but again, you know, more and more as I back away from the African American ethos, you know, I realize that, you know, I'm not too confident that Africa should use its resources to avenge, uh, America. You know, uh, you know, just for the simple reason that, you know, the quote unquote African American would be like 5%, or the African American who does go to Africa, maybe 1% of 1% that go, you know, or 1% of 1% of the African continental experience, and because of that, it's like why are we going to do all this stuff when, you know, 99% of the people are actually, you know, pretty happy, or not happy, but pretty sedated, you know, uh, like pretty sedated. They like most black people would fight against African invaders. Most of them would, you know. So it's just a war. Now, I mean, it could be a little bit more complicated than that. Could be a little different than that. I couldn't say. Okay, I couldn't say. I think that a nation in the future, you know, may be looking forward and not necessarily held back by looking backwards. Of course, Sankofa. You want to look back to move forward, though. You know, it's really interesting. It's a really interesting question. I want to say this because there was this one brother, you know, smart brother. He was on Twitter and he was saying, you know, we have to deal with the psychological ramifications of our enslavement. And it's like, you know, someone like me with my consciousness doesn't really feel any sort of psychological ramifications from our enslavement. You know, uh, and it's a weird thing to say, but, you know, and it's like, it's not because I'm not African American, uh, because the thing is that, you know, people in Jamaica were enslaved, and, you know, the slavery in Jamaica, you know, by a lot of accounts was considered a higher mortality rate, you know, as I say that, like they died much more rapidly, but it's like I almost, like, I kind of just you know, partly because I identify with the, well, at one point I identified with African Americans, and now, you know, I identify with continental Africans, or even, you know, like Ancobia, if you will. You know, I don't really feel uh, the backdrop of slavery. You know, I don't know if that's the same experience for other people, but because of it, it's like, you know, I understand more and more too that, you know, like a new country in Africa, building up its economy, building up its wealth, building up its military, and then saying, "Oh, we're gonna avenge the African Americans for the enslavement." You know, it's just like, why would they do that if, you know, anybody and everybody would be able to, well, anybody and everybody African would be able to come to this nation and live freely without any sort of background judgment, prejudice, all that kind of stuff. So why would we then risk it all to go to war with the world superpower that, you know, that may have a diplomatic relationship with us? So, uh, or, you know, like what's the point? Or even you might say, well, why would we have a diplomatic relationship? It's like, why wouldn't you have a diplomatic relationship? Not to say that you would, but, you know, because, like, again, you know, you might be like, well, you know, we shouldn't have. I mean, the context why you wouldn't necessarily be restricted and restrained to the history it had with quote unquote African Americans. You know, maybe, and of course you obviously with the history it has with nations today in the sense of, you know, debt and so on and so forth. But just to say, oh well, because you enslaved people, you know, how many, 200 years ago, right? That we can't do anything with you. Uh, or we're not going to regard you, we're not going to recognize you, we're going to be in constant war with you, and we're going to, you know, fight until you're defeated, and those African people who don't want liberation would be liberated. It's almost absurd, you know, and this is the kind of the mentality that black nationalism carries, uh, you know, which is kind of absurd, you know, like you really want African people to repatriate. And if African people choose not to repatriate, and it's the same with African people on the continent. If the African people on the continent do not come to the nation that we may have, then it's almost tough luck, you know. The spaces and nations that we intend to create are going to benefit those in proximity mostly, you know. Eventually, it will benefit people outside, but there's no guarantee that it will change the circumstances of everybody outside, you know. Although, that's the rationale behind Garveyism, although that's the rationale behind African, black nationalism, so on and so forth, it's still, it's like, yes, the Chinese man does get more respect because China is stronger. That's true, so that's the situation that you'll find. But the Chinese man doesn't actually exercise power in the United States. And so if your will is to exercise power in the United States, it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely that you'll ever exercise power in the United States. And you probably quote me on that. But that might be oh no, so this is the next one. So this is a good one. Bookman. So this is actually really similar to Marcus Garvey. I think this is the last one though. Yeah, okay. So Marcus Garvey says, Bookman says, we must never accept money and privileges as repayment for the mistreatment of our people. So this is like directly speaking to those who want reparations, and it's really interesting because this is Bookman Dati from 200 years ago, or actually 300 years ago, right? No, 200 years ago. So he is saying, he actually was enslaved. He actually knows the conversation around slavery. And he's like, no, we will never accept money and privileges for repayment of the mistreatment of our people. 200 years later, our people are saying we want money and privileges. And it's kind of like the erosion of the African, and not to say 200 years later, I shouldn't say that. Basically, that means 200 years ago, our people were saying the same thing. But Bookman Dati was saying, no. We don't want money and privileges in your system. We want our own system. We don't want money and privileges in your nation. We want our own nation. And that's really... But the thing is this, again, with Haiti, they were the majority, by far. This is not something that you can expect from America. This is not something you can expect from America. And because you can't expect this from America, I'm not saying, obviously, I wouldn't advise money and privileges, obviously, but I would advise that you repatriate to where you can no longer be mistreated, because the situation in America is such that you likely will always be mistreated. I'd like to finish with interesting passage I found on Twitter the other day, which is, and like I said, I'm pretty active on Twitter, so definitely follow me, but let me know that you're following me because you're from the book of, and because you're from Twitter. That way I can know, that way I can kind of gauge who's following me, because a lot of times it's like somebody might follow me and I'm just like, I don't know who they are. You know what I mean? But here's this quote. It's by this Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, where he says, "We are told if you work hard, you'll succeed, but if that were true, black people would own this country. We are oppressed because we are black, not because we are ignorant, not because we are lazy, not because we are stupid and got good rhythm, but because we are black." And I'm like, this sounds like Stokely Carmichael instead of Kwame Ture, right? In the sense that, the reality is that you're not going to succeed in a nation. You're not going to be the bottom and become the top. You know what I mean? But as long as you're the bottom, or you're not going to be the bottom and not remain the bottom. Pretty much. Like the system is never, even in this case where you accept money and privileges for repayment for the mistreatment of your people, that money and privileges is not going to elevate you from the bottom. You're just going to have a more cushy bottom, but the bottom of, let's say, the bottom of their economic system is always going to be pretty bad. You know, so you're never going to not be mistreated as long as you're in a Western nation. Okay? Now, individually, you could advance, you know, you could get quite a bit of money and privileges. You could get quite a bit. But generally speaking, no. The bottom stays the bottom. Generally speaking. You know, just like the top stays the top. Generally speaking. Now, the top kind of rotates in this nation, but the bottom, but like as a group, it doesn't. You know, as a group, it remains the same, and that's really the big difference that I think really I think we should emphasize. So I see I got no comments and no likes, but that's fine. Well, I got one like, but that's fine. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for engaging. I'm gonna head out of here and wish you the best as this week advances. Think about the things that were said today, and definitely sign up on the Discord for the class that's coming next month. All right, Shem Hotep.